All right, so this is a video talking through the creation of the Ableton set for January 27th. I'm going to make that and just show you how I do it. So I open this. When I open Ableton, this default template opens up, and I press the 1 key to go to the first locator for song 1, and then where I can see the service plan over here, I kind of arrange the windows and just enter this information first from Planning Center. So rename locator number 1. Keep the number 1 in it so that I know this locator is associated with the 1 key on my keyboard, and 2 key, and 3 key, and 4, 5, and so on. So you want to, when you rename it, don't just start typing. You have to move out to the right side of what's already in there. Number 1, space, dash, space, then the title of the song, Only Wanna Sing, space, dash, space, and then the key that we're going to sing it in, which all that information is right here in the service plan. So then press 2. Do the same thing for song number 2. Move out to the right side of what's already entered in there so you don't type over it. Tremble, space, dash, space, C, worthy, G, number 4. Oops. Number 4 is going to be grateful in A. And so this is all consistent and looks pretty. Number, pound sign, then the number, space, dash, space, and the title, space, dash, space, and then the key. And so that should be consistent for all of the songs. And then I can go into full screen by doing Control Command F, or that also is under the View tab, full screen, because I don't need to see the service plan for this next part. And then in local Ableton files, current catalog, this is the library of all the songs that are currently in our catalog. I need to clean it out. There's some extra songs in here, but all the songs that I need for today I can find in this folder, current catalog. Only Want to Sing, I just find that folder. So this is the folder icon, which I cannot drop in. But if I unfold it, then I can find this .als file. And .als means Ableton Live Set, and I can drop that this file in where it says Drop Files and Devices here into my into this live set. So I'm going to click and drag that in. Great. So you can see this created some more tracks. Previously, this was the last track in the list, but it's added all these multiple tracks so that it can bring this content in. So these are the clips that it brought in. And you can see up in my overview here, I'm now towards the beginning of the set. I was all the way out here at the first locator for song 1. When you drop in a .als file where we dropped file and devices here, that's always going to populate towards the beginning of your live set. So I think there's 8 measures of blank that dropped in, and then the clips start at measure 8. So know to look for it towards the front of the timeline. And what you want to do is click the top clip to select it. You can faintly see that it's now kind of highlighted blue. If I unfold it, you can see it's highlighted with this kind of bluish green. So that's selected, and then I move out to the right side of the clip content that just dropped in by clicking the hourglass view, and then scroll to the bottom and hold down the shift key and click somewhere out here, out past the right side of the bottom clip that I entered, or that I dropped in. So holding the shift key selects all of that. If I wasn't holding the shift key, it would just do this and move my cursor there. So what I want to do again, just to show you, is grab the top clip and then scroll out to the right side of the bottom clip, hold down shift and click to select all of this content that's now highlighted blue, and then press the Command X shortcut, hold down Command and press X to cut. So that's cut that content, and now I press the 1 key to move my cursor over to the first song locator. You see my window moved over to the first locator, and then Command V, holding down Command and pressing V, will paste that content in right here. Those are shortcuts. We use the cut command, which is Command X, and then the paste command, which is Command V. And so that moved all of our content from where it was at measure 8 all the way out to measure 121, which is where the first locator for a song should be. So we're almost done. What we need to do now is take these red clips and move them up into these red tracks. If you remember, the template that we started with has these gray groups, and then these red tracks, and then these different blue and purple tracks. And then when I dropped in my .als file, it created more tracks. Well, I don't want I don't want 2 click tracks and 2 tempo tracks and all that stuff. So what I'm going to do is I drop files and devices in this .als files in. It's always going to create multiples of these red tracks. I want to treat these default tracks that were here when I got here like they're the master tracks. So I'm going to take these red clips. In the same process, you just click the top one. Move out to the right side of the content here, hold down the shift key and click just outside the right side of the bottom red content here, so that now all this is selected. I can hold down command and press X to cut, and then arrow up my selection here to the click track and command V to paste. So essentially all that did was take the content from right here in the original, or I guess I call it kind of the packaging tracks. This content has to be dropped in somewhere, and so it's going to create these tracks that existed in this .als file. But I can get rid of this packaging now. I can select all of these duplicate tracks and delete them. All right, great. So this is looking pretty good. And then what I want to do, a couple more steps for this part of the process. I want to change the key while I'm here. So remember, from the service plan, we entered the number of the song, which was already in there, and the title, and then the key. We also got that from the service plan. That's the key that the band wants to play and sing this song in. So the .als file that we drop in is going to be in the original key. In this case, G. You can tell from the original track. Only Want to Sing is in G. From the service plan, we know that the band wants to do Only Want to Sing in A, so we have some transposing to do. So first we're going to transpose the original track by selecting it, and then this arrow in the bottom right corner is going to create a window pane, kind of bottom third view of our screen here is going to now have some content. So this is the clip overview. This is the clip view. So if right here you can see this little info view. This little box is very helpful for, you can hover your mouse over stuff and it tells you all kinds of information about, what you've got your mouse over. So what we have right here is the detail view. Sorry, so this arrow will show or hide detail view of whatever I have selected. I can select different things, and this bottom third window will change. You can see. So again, what we want to do is select the Only Want to Sing original track. This is the original MP3 from Hillsong, and we've got by default some details visible. It's possible that you're going to start with this, and this is the track view. So this is information. What we're seeing in this detail view is about the original track, not the clip that I have selected. So if you press this arrow and see this, just know you have to select this thing. So you're looking at this, you don't see what you need to see. Try clicking there and see, okay, now I see what I need to see. All that can also be done by holding down Shift and pressing the Tab key. So if this is, I could click here to bring that bottom third detail view up, or I could hold down Shift and press Tab, and this will actually move back and forth between these two tabs. If I hold down Shift and click or press the Tab key, it just jumps back and forth between the track view and the clip view. Anyway, what we want to see is the clip view. So you should see something like this when you click on the and select the Only Want to Sing original track clip. And we've got a transpose option here for this sample. So to transpose it, we need to go from G up 2 semitones to A, because this will currently sound in the key of G, but the band wants it to sound in the key of A. So we need to go up 2 semitones, or 2 half steps. So we click the transpose wheel, enter 2, hit enter, and that is 2 semitones up now. which is A. So the same process needs to happen for all of the tonal instruments in our multi-track. So this group here, this pink only want to sing group that we dropped in as part of this .als file, is called a multi-track, where it breaks down all of the individual instruments from the original MP3 that Hillsong produced. It breaks all those out into individual instruments. And I need to select the instruments that are tonal versus non-tonal, like drums, and I need to transpose the tonal instruments like guitar. Drums I don't need to transpose, and if you do transpose that, it kind of sounds weird to transpose drum hits, and you don't need to. So what you need to do is check for the tonal instruments, and usually they're stacked in non-tonal instruments on top, and then the first tonal instrument you get to, like this bass, is gonna kind of start the list of tonal instruments. Everything after it, 99% of the time, is going to be a tonal instrument, so you can grab all of these at once. Click the top one, and then shift-click the bottom one. Hold down shift and click the bottom one. And so now I've got all these selected, and I go to transpose and enter the 2 key, hit enter, and that goes up 2 semitones. One thing I know about this song, and this is unusual, like I said, 99% of the time, the first tonal instrument you hit, all the rest of the instruments after it are going to be tonal, and you can do what we just did. In this case, there's this synth loop, which is kind of weird. Sometimes you have to check and make sure it's not a combination of instruments represented on this track. And in this case, it happens to be. So we'll just listen to I'm going to solo it by clicking this little S, and then play just this little section. You can see that spike right there. We're going to listen to that. Okay, so there's some percussion, but there's also a voice in there. And right now that voice is in G. By default, I need to move that up to A. So otherwise it's going to sound weird just when it gets to that one part. And that's going to match all the other instrumentation that we have. So
4 2 3 4.
Cool. So we've transposed the first song. We've entered the multi-track and transposed that first song. Do the same thing for song number 2. Again, unfold the folder here, Tremble, and drag in the .als file. Drop files and devices here. It's going to show up around measure 8 in my timeline. See the overview here, it all dropped in right there. So I can click there, scroll up, grab the top red clip that dropped in, and move out past the right side, scroll down, shift click outside the bottom right, Command X to cut, 2 key to jump over to move my cursor quickly over to the second song's locator, Command V to paste, and then same process here. I'm going to move all my red clips up into this master set of red tracks. Command X, arrow up, Command V, delete all the packaging that those came in, and check the key. So this is originally in C, and the band wants to play it in C, so that one's done. We can fold that up. Number 3. Now we need Worthy, so we're going to grab that ALS file and drop it in. I'll check the key while we're here. They want to play it in G, and it's originally in G, so that's perfect. Number 4 is Grateful. 4. And they want to do it in A, and it's originally in A. So that is perfect. All right, so that's the process so far. Just one more quick step we can do together is I've dropped in all the multi-tracks, transposed them. In this case, they're all in 4/4. I could show you on a different week if there's a song in 6/8 or 3/4 or any kind of odd time signature that's not 4/4. How to change that, but in this case we don't need to. But that step would happen at this point in the process too. But one last thing we can do, we'll go back out of full screen view, which is Control Command F, or again you can find that in View, Full Screen. We'll toggle in and out of full screen there. So I can see my service plan again, and I'm just going to enter locators for all the non-song elements of the service. So we've got songs, we entered all those in. We already had locators for those, but I like to see locators in there for things like the welcome, the sermon, and celebrations and things like that. So now at this point, once I have my songs in there, I add those in because I don't know until I have my songs in there exactly where I want those to happen. So the first one is going to be the welcome, and it's going to happen towards the end of the first song, which you can see is right here in the overview. Click there, and this is not exactly a scientific process. You kind of want to hear how the song ends and imagine where I put this locator is where I want the lights to come up, because later on I'm going to use this locator as a reference point for doing lighting and a call out on the screen in ProPresenter or things like that. So this is where I put this locator towards the end of that first song is where I want that transition to happen for the welcome. So we'll just rewind a little bit. This is where it actually ends, but we'll rewind and listen to how that ends. Great. So that's a very punctuated end. There's not like a retard where it slows down and then they hit it. Somewhere back here, it's right where it says end is the end. So that'd be a great place to put the locator for the lights to come up. And we'll rename that locator. So just to show you again and describe it, click where you want the locator to go, and then you hit the set button right there. That creates a locator, and then you have to select the locator and rename it with Command R, or you can right click to rename as well. Welcome/baptisms. I don't need a separate locator for baptisms because there's nothing, Ableton wise, there's nothing between the welcome and the baptisms. What will be happening here is pad in the key of the next song. So, and that'll just continue from the welcome through the baptisms until the next song happens. So that's great. We've got our locator in there for the welcome and the baptisms. The next thing in the service that I want to have a locator for that is not a song is the sermon or the message. And then that's going to happen after song 3. So I go to the end of song 3, which is right here in my overview. And I can see here's where the song ends, but I'm going to again listen to it and make sure that this is the best place to put that locator. Sometimes you want to move it a little bit one way or the other depending on how you want the lighting look to be on stage. Great. Again, right there is a very, very good punctuated ending. So we're going to hit the set button, rename this with Command R, and we'll call this sermon. You can do sermon or message, whichever is best. And then the next thing we'll want to do is a locator for the celebrations. That happens at the end of song 4. And so again, we want to listen to how this ends. Great. Again, very punctuated. That's a great place for the lights to come up. So we'll, with our cursor right there, press the set button, rename this to celebrations, and we're looking good there. So this is the process so far. I'm going to go back into full screen and save my progress. I probably should have done this earlier on, maybe even as soon as in that first step when I was showing you just entering the content up here before I dropped in any ALS files. I was just typing in the name and the key for all these songs, that would be a great place to save and name your project. So not too late, but it's never too early either. So we'll do File, Save Live Set As. If you do Save Live Set, you're going to create a project with the title Untitled, and that's not helpful. So project management is one of the most important aspects of this entire thing. So you have to make sure you are very consistent with how you name things and where you put things so that you know exactly where to find them. And, files stay organized really well because we're doing this every week and they stack up. So if you get a little bit sloppy with file management, it can kind of ruin the whole project. So again, File, Save Live Set As, and this allows you to name your project. And we want to go, right now we're looking at last week's 1/20/19 Sunday service folder. We want to go back a layer. We don't want to create our live set in last week's folder. So we're going to click here and go back a layer to this week's worship set, which exists in local Ableton files in my documents folder on my hard drive. But we just need to go back one layer to this week's worship set. And you can see this gives you a good view of our documents folder, local Ableton files folder, this week's worship set folder, and then here is where we want to create our actual service project folder. So we're going to type in the date 1/27/19 space Sunday service, and then save. And this is going to create a folder and a .als file with this title. Great. So now I have, you can see this change from untitled to, I think this is the folder that this project exists in, and then this is the .als file title. One more step though, you'd think that's saved and ready, but if you're moving this project from one computer to another computer, which we're always pretty much doing, I almost always build this on my laptop, then move it to the computer in the auditorium. You have to do this other kind of save, which does collect all and save. So we did Save Live Set As to allow us to name the title or the project what we want it to be called. But we also need to then hit Collect All and Save. And the difference between these two, Save Live Set or Save Live Set As, is going to be fine if you're keeping this on the same machine. And if I wanted to play this back from the computer that I built it on, that'd be fine. But if I want to save it to a different computer or export it to a different computer, then I need to do this one. And what this one does is it creates a duplicate file of every single track and clip that I have entered into my project, bundled up within this folder. So if I want to move this to a different computer, I can drag this folder into a different computer, and all of this content comes with it. At this point, having not done Collect All and Save, Ableton is looking for these files where they originally existed on my hard drive, which was, in this case, in the current catalog library. So what will happen if you didn't do Collect All and Save is you'd move this to another computer, and you'd see a lot of the stuff in here would make it over, with your export, but a lot of the audio files wouldn't. They'd be blank and say sample not available or something like that. So anyway, long-winded explanation of why it's important after you create good file management with Save Live Set As, but then the next thing you need to do is Collect All and Save, and this is really important when you're moving files from one computer to another computer. And this takes a little while, again, because it's creating duplicate files for each audio clip or each little audio clip that this set is going to reference. It has to be packaged up and duplicated in this week's worship set folder right here. So that created all these samples. So it made duplicates of all these samples so that I can drag this folder over to the other computer and it'll have everything that I needed to have. So cool. So here, I'll just keep going and kind of finish up and keep the tape rolling. But what we want to do now is think through the transitions that we want between each song. So these are, everything I've shown you so far is stuff that's the same every week, really. Same process for dropping all of the multi-tracks in. This is kind of the, the beginning grunt work of putting this together. Now, from here on out, any work I'm doing in Ableton is going to be kind of more nuanced and tailored to the actual service and getting more detailed and putting kind of the finishing touches on the service and how we want it, transitions to flow from one moment into the next moment, So I'll show you how I do. This is pretty often how I'm going to do a transition from the first song into the welcome. I'm going to go to the second song actually and grab just a little sample from the front of the click and the tempo track, or clips, I guess. So I'm going to click here at the beginning of the tempo clip, or click clip, and holding down, I'm going to drag this to select the first measure of click and tempo from song number 2. I'm going to hit Command C to copy it. I don't want to do Command X because I don't want to cut this out of there. I want that to stay in there. I just want to copy it. And then I can go to where this click ended from song 1, click there, and then paste it. And then what I can do is zoom out with the minus key. You can zoom out using the minus key, or you can click here and drag up or down to zoom in and out. I like to do minus because it feels a little more accurate to me. But with both of these selected now, if I put my cursor on the end of this clip, it turns into a bracket. And I can click and hold and then drag it out. And I want to drag this out to, zoom out a little more. I want to drag it all the way over to the second song's beginning, just like that. And what this does is set kind of in this no man's land, this blank space in between song 1 and song 2. What this is going to do is give the band a click in the tempo of the next song they're about to go into. And then the second thing we're going to do is add a pad to that. So what on stage, what would have happen in the service, the transition goes from song 1, kind of comes down, lights go up, and then as the music kind of fades out, we want there to fade in this pad in the key of the next song, so that that's happening in the background. If there's any noodling the band wants to do, it's with the assistance of a pad in the key of the song they're about to go into, so that's nice and smooth and seamless. This is the first step in doing that, is adding a click and a tempo clip. If you don't have a tempo clip, it messes things up later. So I found the best thing to do, even before you add the pad clip, is to add this tempo clip, because this controls the tempo in your timeline, which is very important as you build. So what I also like to do is back this up a little bit. So if the band is kind of trash canning and celebrating in the key of the first song, which was A, and then this pad is going to fade in, that we're about to add, is going to fade in right around here. I want the band to drop out before that happens, because A and C don't play nicely together. They can trash can until the click stops in their ear. That's going to be a natural cue for them to, okay, let it die down. And then this trails off, and then C, right around here, the C pad is going to swell in and start pulsing there. So that looks good. And then I go to my pads group. This again was part of the default template before we started any of this. I unfold, this is a group, so I can unfold it, and I can see there's a track entered in this group that says enter key. So this is the first one. If I have, I'm going to go check which key I want to enter. Again, it's C. For the second song, I'm going to enter a pad in C. So I can rename this where it says enter key, pad, or let's say C pad. Great. And then over here in my local Ableton files library, I've got a pads folder that I can unfold, and I've got all these different options. These are folders with a lot of different WAV files in them. I've been using the WT Pads 5 Simple Pads. This just sounds, some of these are a little bit weird to me, but these all sound good to me. So I'm sure others sound good up here too, I just haven't checked. So the key of C pad is what I want. and I want to go back to the beginning where I want it to swell in, which is probably, I'm guessing, right here. So I'm going to drop it in there, and then I'll listen to it just to check. So click and drag it in, and then it's really long. If I zoom all the way out, you can see this is 20 minutes of pad. So I'm not going to use all that. I'll zoom back in, and I'll cut this down to size. I'll probably cut it right around here where the second song comes in, but right here I want to check, first I want to check, is this starting in the right place, or I need to drag it forward or backwards? So let's again listen to the end of the song. And maybe trash canning right here a little bit. And it's probably, that's probably fine right there. If anything, I could move it up a little bit, but I think it's fine right here. This is a song where I really do think they will trash can, so often what they'll do, that's kind of a sudden ending, and what we often do is this big hit and then two hits, da, da, and then a trash can that starts like right here. So they'll trash can for a bit, fade out, and then this pad comes in. So that's good. And then, like I said, I don't want this to go on for 20 minutes. As you can see in the overview, it goes all the way past the third song. So we can cut it here and delete this second half. And then what's great about this is, even though I cut it here, I can still fine-tune it and really line it up exactly where I want it. So I'm going to listen to this transition. If I hit song 2, it's going to be doing the C pad during the count, the intro count for the band, and then music should start here. Let's just listen to how this sounds right away.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
So what I noticed that the treble multitrack is doing, if I get this out of the way, I can really hear it. This is going to fade in a pad
Intro
during
2,
this count
3,
measure.
4.
You hear it faded in right around here
3, 4.
to a hit. And then it's got a C pad going from about here on.
3, 4.
So what I can do is drag this back and then create a fade so that once the drummer hits the 2 key on his MIDI controller, it'll jump ahead to this moment. The C pad will still be going, and it'll start to fade out as the treble multitrack fades in to this hit. So let's see. So I'm going to select the end of this clip and press Command Option F. Or what else I could do is right click and create fade out is right there as an option. So the shortcut is Command Option F, or you can right click and get this little menu and then create fade out. And that created this fade and I can really control this fade in a cool way too. So let's listen to this and hear how it sounds.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
That's a little bit abrupt for the fade out, so I'm actually going to drag it out over the course of a measure and a half. It's going to start at the beginning of this measure and gradually fade by the end of the second half of the second measure.
2, 3, 4.
I'm even going to go farther. Why not? So I'm going to have this fade over the course of 2 measures. You see how much control I have over this fade time? Which is really cool.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
That seems really smooth and seamless to me, so I like that right there. And then while I'm here, I'm going to show you the process for creating an auto repeat to happen up here at this point in the timeline. So like I said, this is the Welcome and the Baptisms locator, and then that pad starts right here, but I don't know for a fact that they're going to do their Welcome and Baptisms for exactly this amount of time. And then we're going to want to go into song 2. What I want to be able to do is have this just kind of repeat in a holding pattern, like it's an airplane circling the runway, waiting for clearance to land. It's just going to stay here forever, until the drummer hits the 2 pad on his MIDI controller, and that's clearance for the plane to come in for a landing. It's going to jump ahead to this moment and continue on with the rest of the timeline of song 2. So the way that we do that is It's not, again, it's not an exact science, but we're gonna pick a spot probably right here. And what you want to do is select a spot where you're pretty sure that the pad has at least faded all the way in. So at the beginning of it, it's very soft, and it fades in. You want to jump ahead to somewhere where you're certain it's at least faded all the way in by now, and create a locator, and name that locator auto repeat. And then what's going to happen, basically the concept of it is the cursor is just going to keep playing to a certain point, and then I've got this cool button right here. If I click this, it's going to jump back to the last locator. You see this locator starts to flash. As soon as I click this previous locator button, I'll do it again. So it flashes, and it jumps back. Flashes, jumps back. So we're going to use that feature in a smart way to create this auto repeat function. So nobody has to sit here and wait for the perfect time to hit this previous locator button. We have a clip hidden out in my little toolbox here in the back of the template. I can jump back here to the locator clips locator, and I can zoom in, and hidden up here in this repeat group is in the repeat command track, this little previous clip. And what this is, it's a clip, a simple clip with a MIDI note, and this MIDI note is tied to this button. So when this MIDI note plays in either this track or this track, what it's going to do is it's going to play this MIDI note out of Ableton and then back into Ableton, pressing this button. So I can explain more about how that happens and maybe show you in a different video how to set that up, but the beautiful thing is about this template is that's already done for you. All you need to know is where to put this. You don't need to necessarily know how it works. So we're going to grab this previous clip or previous locator clip by pressing Command C. Again, I don't want to do Command X because I don't necessarily want to take it out of my toolbox. I just want to copy it from my toolbox. Fold this back up and then jump back to where we were for the welcome. And I find the end of my runway here. And I'm going to enter this into the stop skip track, the last measure of pad before song 2. I'm going to click at the beginning of that measure, and then Command V will paste it. And then what's going to happen, you'll see it's going to play, and then once it hits this moment, it's going to play that MIDI note, pressing this button, and you'll see this locator begin to flash because it's been selected. So watch. It's about to get there. Yep, and it started flashing. Perfect. It finishes that measure, and then it jumps back. Oh, that actually sounded really good. So the next thing that we would need to do is drag this around. To put it in, just to get it started, we put it somewhere once we were certain that the pad had swelled all the way in. But then after I put my previous locator clip into the stop skip track, what I like to do is drag this around so it sounds really smooth and seamless. And this ours, we just got lucky this first time. So let's listen to it. You can hear a little bit of a seam there, but it's not bad. You can hear it kind of jump back just a little bit, but not much. Yeah, that sounds really natural, like a really natural place to have this auto repeat locator. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that for the welcome. We're going to do that for the sermon, and we're going to do something similar to that for the celebrations. I usually don't do that, or sometimes I guess it's kind of 50-50. If I do something like this between the second and third songs, sometimes I want the second song to go directly into the third song. Sometimes I want to put this pad, a pad in there between these two. So I'll make that decision based on a few things. First, let's look at the key of both of the songs. This one's in C, this one's in G. So we don't need necessarily a pause between C and G. Those will play pretty nicely together. This one would fade out of C, and this fading into G would be okay. So let's say we're not going to do that this week. This is just to show you a different type of transition where the song goes from one directly into the next. We'll grab this section of the timeline by clicking at the end of the first or second song, and then we move our window over to the beginning of the third song, hold down Shift and click to select all of that space between these two songs, and then I can delete time. Delete would do nothing because I have no clips or content selected, but delete time will actually take and drag all of this content and everything behind it forward to the beginning of my selection, which is right here. Essentially just pulling out this blank section of time. So I'm going to do that. Delete time, which is also Command-Shift D. No, sorry, that was duplicate time. So that just duplicated that time. So I'm going to, you see how this got twice as long instead of disappearing completely. I'm going to hit Command-Z to undo. I knew something was wrong there. And let's try that again. So I still have the same section selected. Command-Shift-Delete is what I meant to do. And that deleted all that space to make this instant. And then we're going to listen to it and just make sure it sounds good.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
Sounds good. Let's listen to it one more time. This seems a little bit long to me, but maybe I just need to hear it again.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
Alright, so I do want to shorten this. I'm going to show you one way of doing that right now. So I can, this is 3 measures of fade out of the key of C. So they're hitting their last chord and they're fading out for 3 measures before the count for worthy, and then the first note of worthy is here. So there's 4 measures total between the last hit here and the first hit here. I think what I want to have happen is I want this count to overlap with this last measure of fade out. And the way I can do that is by selecting this last measure of fade out, using my delete time feature, Command-Shift-Delete. And that pulls everything to the right of it back by 1 measure. But then what this did in effect was it also deleted this content, the very last measure of this fade out. So let's listen to that. It's going to sound abrupt with the fade out just stopping instantly.
Intro 2.
So that doesn't sound good yet, but what I can do is unfold my multitrack and grab all of those multitracks, holding down the Shift key and clicking the bottom one to select all of them, and I can drag this back out a measure. So now there will be a true overlap between this last measure of fade out and the kind of fade in count before the first beat of worthy. This should sound really smooth.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's really good. So a couple things, you know, the tempo changed from here, which is 74, to 65, which is I heard the change, but I don't think anybody else would. And the fact that this is just a fade out of this kind of chord ringing out, the tempo change, you can hear it, but it's not going to impact things for the service or be distracting. So that works out. Great. So then the next transition in the service is going to be the sermon, and we're going to do a similar process to what we did here. Again, we started by grabbing click and tempo from the second song. In this case, we don't want to grab the click and tempo from the next song because we're not going into the next song right now. What I can do is just extend the click and tempo from the third song. But I can't do that exactly the same way you might think I could by just clicking and dragging it out. This is as long as these clips can get, because when I created the multi-track for the song, I put kind of a hard end time right here. It won't get any longer. If I want to extend this click and tempo, what I can do is go to the beginning of these clips and grab the first measure again of both by clicking and dragging to select see both of these are selected. Command C to copy the first measure. Go to the end, Command V, and these clips now I can extend just by clicking and dragging. And you see up here how much distance there is between these two songs. I don't need a ton of runway just to have a pad loop right here at the end of the song. Probably all that's going to happen right here is a prayer, and then seat people, and Mark will come up and preach. I still put in a true pad that's just going to auto repeat, so that if we wanted to go back into the song or we want to sing the chorus again or something like that, we have plenty of time and there's just a click and a pad happening. But it doesn't need to be enormous. This is probably fine right here. So we can do that. And then we've got our pads group. Remember, this was in here already. This enter, I think it said enter key was the title of this track. Within this group, I want to create a new track now for a G pad, because this is in the key of G. We want a pad sounding in the key of G. So we're going to click here and insert audio track, or Command T. Rename this G pad. This is automatically, because I created this track within a group, the audio is going to go be routed to the group, which is important. I could explain why maybe in another video, but just know that you'll want to have this, just to show you again. If I had something else selected somewhere else on the list of tracks here, let's say I click right here, this is just a track, not a group, and I do insert audio track, it's going to create this audio track not within this group, and then the audio is going to be routed to the master output, which is going to be the wrong place. So when you get to this step, if you need to create a new pad track for a pad to sound in a new key that you haven't used yet, you've already used your first kind of default template track, you need to select that track and then insert the pad within this pads group. Just know that. So then we can rename that to G pad. I can shrink this down a little bit just to make it look pretty. Great. And then I'm going to select a pad in the key of G to start kind of swelling in at the end of this third song. All right, that sounds really smooth. Again, I don't want this to go on for 20 minutes. Each of these are 20 minutes long, so you can just cut that there and delete the rest of it. And then you guessed it, we're going to put in an auto repeat locator somewhere around there. Rename it auto repeat. We're going to do the same process. I can grab my previous locator clip from my toolbox over here, hidden in the right side, or because I already put it over here, I can just copy it from here and paste it to the end, the last measure of this section, and then just listen to make sure it sounds smooth. Let's listen to it again. That's pretty good. It's really pretty good. So we're getting lucky here. Often I would have to drag this forward a few measures or back a few measures, just because where this is and kind of its swelly, fluid, dynamic pad, it's going to sound like choppy if it jumps from here to a previous spot, unless I line this up in something where the tone sounds similar at this point as it does here. That sounds like a smooth repeat, not like there's a big jump or break in the audio. Cool, and the next thing I'm going to do is skip a measure in my timeline. So I'm at 497, I'm going to jump to 498 and create a locator here called response noodling. We do this before the final song in a set, because this is after the sermon here. We've got the sermon here. Pad, we stop that. And then the next thing after the sermon, the band's going to come out, the drummer's going to come to the computer and need to find this response noodling locator to start it and be playing a click in the tempo of the next song and a pad in the key of the next song. So I want that to be right here, and the first thing I'm going to do is grab a little bit of the click and tempo, the first measure of those clips, copy those, jump back to my response noodling locator and paste them, zoom out to drag it to fill in the rest of this time on the timeline. Cool. Actually, you know what I don't like about that is from here, when I deleted time between songs 2 and songs 3, remember it dragged everything forward, and now if you look at this, this song doesn't start in a predictable place. And so what I want to do is, instead of dragging this over to fill in this time, I'm actually just going to delete the time before song 4. And that's more of just an aesthetic. It looks better, and you're certain that the next song starts on the downbeat of a new measure. It's not somewhere in the middle of a measure or something like that. So deleting time, like we did, between songs 2 and songs 3, is always okay to do. You just have to make sure that it doesn't mess up the rest of your timeline when you drag things forward on the grid of Ableton. So anyway, yeah, we've got our click. So what would happen here? The drummer would come out and start this. That's great, but we want to add a pad to that. So we're going to open our pads group. We've got a C pad track that we could drop a C pad clip into, or a track for a G pad if we want to drop a G pad in. But what key do we want? What key is the 4th song in? Oh, that's an A. So we need to add a new track. Again, by clicking within this group somewhere. I could click here or here. I think I could even click the group. But I'm going to click one of the tracks within the group, and then Command T is going to insert a new audio track. Or again, you can right click, insert audio track. And I'm going to rename this from being 20 audio, which it is by default. I'm going to Command R to rename, name it A pad, shrink this down so it looks pretty. And then now I'm ready to, I have a spot now to enter my A clip from my A pad. So go right here and grab the key of A pad and drag it in starting at the response noodling locator. Put it in my A pad track. You see again it's way too long, so what I can do is go to the beginning of the song and I can just cut it at the intro and then kind of fine tune where I want it to actually fade out at.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
So let's get this out of the way so I can hear if there's a fade in or a swell in this measure for Grateful.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
There really isn't, and so I'm actually going to extend this out into the second measure of the multi-track and select the end of it. Command Option F will create a fade. And again, you can find that by right-clicking on the clip and create fade out. So I'm going to just listen to this and make sure it sounds good.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
That sounds really smooth. And then the last thing I need to do for this transition is, again, add my previous locator clip to this point in my stop skip track, which I've now gotten 2 places. I had it here. I can find it right here where I am now. Command C to copy it. Go back to the end of our response noodling. Command V to paste it. And then you don't want to forget the next step, because if you move on to the next part of the service and move on to the next transition, I missed a step. Or I guess I didn't miss it yet, but this is where I would do this next step that you don't want to forget about. I'll show you what happens if I don't do this next step. And if the band comes out and for the response noodling is just noodling with this pad, it's going to jump back to this locator because this is the previous locator from here. I need to put a locator again out here somewhere after this pad has already swelled in. Probably right here is a good place to start. Oops. See, I hit this button instead of this button. So hit set, name this auto repeat. And this just gives the previous locator clip a auto repeat point instead of jumping back to the beginning of the clip, the A pad clip, which is going to again swell in the A pad. I don't want it to swell. I want it to be in present and full already. That's good. There's a little bit of a seam there, but it's not bad. It won't be noticeable. Cool. So this point in the service is done, and then here at the celebrations, that's the last transition we need to enter. And we've got a few options here. But what I'm going to do, I'll show you kind of the default option, what I normally do, and then give you a little more information of other options. So I just folded up my pads folder, but in the same local Ableton files folder, I've got this celebrations audio folder. Celebrations grateful in the key of A. What you want to do now is pick one of these two celebrations audio projects to pull the ALS file in from, and you make that decision based off of the key of the song you just did. So that key was A. I need something in or close to A. Oh, grateful is in A. Oh, grateful happens to be the song we just did, and this is a celebrations audio made from the same song, so that'll sound obviously very appropriate. So we're going to grab the .als file for the celebrations grateful project and drop that in where it says drop files and devices here. And you see again it dropped in over here. This is similar but different to the multi-tracks for normal worship songs. Everything's gray, you might notice, and there's a few things that are different about it. So we're going to, similar process right now, we're going to grab the top clip, but then something important to notice is these clips are broken up, and that's on purpose. But what you have to be careful of, if you didn't notice that, and you accidentally shift click right here, it won't grab all of this content. So you need to hold down the shift key and click outside of the end of this audio, outside the right side of it, and then Command X to cut. And then we're going to jump over here and put it, to start with, we'll put it right there. We might move it forward to the left. I think we probably will. But I always start by putting it out past the end of the song, and then I can drag it forward if I need to. And then I'm going to move these gray clips up to the packaging, up to the master set of red tracks. Command X, arrow up, Command V, and then delete the packaging that they came in. Cool. And then, yeah, so right now we have to do a couple more things with this to make it work, but first let's focus on the transition between this audio and this audio. I wonder what it'll sound like if I just delete this last measure and have it swell in and overlap. That actually sounds pretty good. So that's pretty much the process. You kind of listen to it and see how this is going to end and where you want this to fade in. And that looks good. And then one of the next steps, we can fold this up, one of the next steps we need to do is, actually the instructions are in here under the markers track. These clips say what to do. Add locator at beginning and end of this clip. Okay, so we'll add our auto repeat locator right here. Oops. Button. and we're going to rename this auto repeat. And then the locator that we're going to add at the end of this clip is not just any locator, so I don't want to click set right here. I actually want to drag this number 5 locator over so that the drummer has a pad on his MIDI controller, which is the 5 pad, and it's associated with this locator, so he can hit it and it ends the celebrations audio. So I'm going to zoom out to do that, and just to get my locator over there, I'm going to select the space in between, and I'm going to delete this time, Command-Shift-Delete. That drags all the stuff to the right of that selection forward in the timeline. And zoom back in, and now this is really easy to, instead of having to drag it all the way from over here really far and zoomed out, I'm zoomed in and I can drag it right to where I want it. And I want to drag this over too. And for now, I'll drag this over as well. This will change, but again, it's just part of the default set, and it's good to have it, rather than having it just sloppy and over here, I want to move it over to where the fifth or the end of the service will be, so that I can change it later. Fold that back up and rename this end of service, keeping the number 5 like we did before, end of service. Again, if I type over the number 5, then the drummer doesn't intuitively know that's associated with the 5 pad or the 5 key on the keyboard. So it's got to say number 5 and then the thing that it is. Then the next step, the next transition, so to speak, in the service is the end of service. So we need to put a stop clip in right here at this moment. So again, over here in my toolbox, I've got this stop clip, Command-C to copy it, move to where I want to put it, and in the stop skip track, Command-V to paste it, and this will, essentially this does a similar thing. It plays a MIDI note that is associated with the stop button. So you'll see it'll play. Once it gets there, it's going to press the stop button. Yep, stopped. Cool, so this is now nearly done. One more thing we can do while we're here is create a visual cue track, and this track, let's create it first and I'll tell you what it does. So clicking down here at the bottom of our list of tracks, our very last track, our very bottom track is always going to be this visual cue track. I can right click and insert MIDI track. It's not an audio track, it's a MIDI track. I can click there, or I can do Command-Shift-T. Command-Shift-T will insert a brand new MIDI track at the very bottom of our list. I'm going to fold that up. I'm going to rename it Visual Cue, all caps. And then I'm going to change the color from where it is right now, which is this kind of aqua green, to white. So at the bottom of every Ableton service that we use on a Sunday should be a white MIDI track named Visual Cue, and inside of it, what we put in terms of clips here is just going to be a visual cue for the person who's about to go on stage that their transition is coming up. So you want to find those transitions. We need one at the beginning of the service for the band. We need one at the celebrations for the person who's going to come out and do celebrations. We want one, we don't need one at the end of the second song, but we do need one at the end of the third song because that's where the sermon happens. So even though there is a transition here, there's not a from backstage to on stage transition where somebody has to see that TV in the back isn't telling the band to go into the second song. The band knows to go into the second song. But Mark might want to be backstage and see when his transition comes up for the third song. So we put one here. We don't need one here or anywhere until the end of the fourth song, which is where the celebrations person comes out. It's good to have them see on that TV in the backstage. There's 20 seconds remaining in the song, and then you're on stage. So that's what this does. So we're going to go again to the first one, and this is where the band needs to be on stage, so we can start with that. Select a little bit of the timeline, and we're going to insert MIDI clip, or Command-Shift-M. Insert MIDI clip. I'm going to rename this. I'm going to change the color to red. And this red indicates you should be on stage now. If you're reading this, you're in the wrong place. So Command-R will rename it Band on Stage. And then here, this is an exact science. It's not an exact number of measures, because the amount of measures that 20 seconds is depends on the time signature that you're in, or the tempo that you're in, sorry, or both, I guess. But at the bottom here, up here you see measure numbers. Down here you can see seconds and minutes. So we want to go back 20 seconds from this moment in the service, which is at 5 minutes. We need to go back to 4 minutes and 40 seconds. And this now is 20 seconds worth of our timeline. And right here we can rename this 00:20 seconds remaining. So once the cursor, the people about to go on stage are trained to know when the cursor reaches the beginning of this clip, there's 20 seconds remaining until the lights change for their cue on stage. They've got 20 seconds from here to be where they need to be at this time. So we're going to jump ahead now to the next transition where we need one of these, which is the welcome and baptisms. And we can grab here, and I'll just put celebrations on stage because I don't know who's doing celebrations, but this will be clear enough. Change this to red. And then this moment in the service is 8 minutes and 7 seconds, let's say. Or 6 seconds, 8 minutes and 6 seconds. So we need to go back to 7 minutes and 46 seconds to grab 20 seconds worth of time. And rename that 00:20 seconds remaining. And you might notice like one of these wasn't capitalized, and I went back and capitalized it. And again, I can't stress enough how important it is with the little details to make it consistent. And partially from an aesthetic standpoint, I think there's something to it. A lot of eyes are going to look at this. It's not just the person creating it. So if it was just me seeing this, I might be a little more sloppy with some of those aesthetic things like capitalizing the word remaining. But because this is on a TV for people about to go on stage, they need to see exactly what they're looking for quickly in the same spot every single week. The drummer is another one where he's going to be really running this during the service. I want everything laid out exactly the same every single time. And so, yep, I'm kind of a stickler about the simple but minute things. So anyway, there's the second transition where we need something in the visual cue track. We don't need anything here because the band's already on stage. They're not coming out. Again, we don't need one here because the band's already on stage. Here we do need one because Mark's coming out on stage. So we can start by entering that. Mark on stage. Change that to red just to indicate, Mark, you should be on stage by this moment. And then find the minute mark here, 21 minutes and 21, 2, 3. No. This is 2:46, it looks like. So let me zoom in one more click here. Yeah. So this is 21 minutes and 21, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds. And I'm going to go now down to 21 minutes and 6 seconds to take 20 seconds out of that. 21 minutes and 6 seconds. That's close enough. That's kind of between 5. No, sorry. This is 6 seconds. You can see this is 21 minutes and 5 seconds right here. And this tick mark is 6 seconds. So Command-Shift-M will create our MIDI clip, rename it 20 seconds remaining. Great. And then the last one is, again, we don't need one here because the band will already be on stage. They will have a cue, but it won't be from Ableton for when they come back on stage. The next cue coming out of Ableton, at least on that back screen, is going to be for a celebrations person. And we can rename that. Again, I don't know who it is, but I'll change this later. On stage, make that red so that they know, red alert, you need to be on stage. And we've got the minute mark here is 30 minutes and 55, 6, 7, 8, right? 9, 10, yeah. So 58 seconds. So take 20 seconds out of that, that's 38 seconds. I need to go back to 30 minutes and 38 seconds. And Command-Shift-M, 20 seconds remaining. Perfect. And that is our visual cue track for this service. This is from start to finish, man. This is it. The only other thing that I would add is ProPresenter commands. But again, by default, I've got a group with tracks in here for the ProPresenter commands, and they've got clips in there automatically for the different transitions, or at least the song transitions, which again, that's what was in here before. We added locators for the other types of transitions, non-song transitions like the welcome, sermon, and celebrations and stuff like that. So I've got more work to do here once I've built the ProPresenter playlist. Then I know which item number the first song is, and which item number the welcome document is, and which item number second song is, and the sermon, and so forth. So then all I would do after I have that information is go to templates and tools, ProPresenter, select playlist item, and drop in. This is that clip right here. If the first song is for some reason item number 6, I just drop in item 6, and I do that for every different item in the playlist that I want Ableton to reference within ProPresenter. So I may also, like for instance here, need to do, if this is item number 7 for the welcome, I have to put item number 7 right here, and then not slide 23, because there is no slide 23 in the welcome document. I need to grab slide 1, which is in the trigger slide drop down here, and then I want to get rid of this because I don't want it to clear that slide. So there's a little bit of editing there to do, but it's primarily just adding in the item number for the songs, and then slide 1 for anything that's not a song, all the way to the end of the service in ProPresenter, so that these are married up and working properly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with it. This was an hour and 12 minutes. Wow, great job. Thanks.